Driving it home with Patti Vasquez, Patti Vasquez.
From global conflicts to greenhouse gases, the folks refusing to wear masks says, and politicians getting caught grabbing asses says, she's driving it home with Patti Vasquez.
All right, let's go. Wow. I feel like too many things are happening all at once. What's that movie, Dan Schaefer from the Palatini and Tuesday with Josie? Everything, everywhere, all at once. That's what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
That's what every single day feels like again. Like
it's
that's
like not reality. It's just like
yes and no. Because it's intensely real. Like the reality is bizarre and surreal, and my fingers are hot dogs.
Because I question, I'm like, is this actually reality? Like, is this happening? And then also,
I know what's happening. I don't question any of it.
Things.
Yeah, so maybe that's why.
I guess you're a better person than I am.
No. Maybe that's why it's a wrong analogy. It's just too many. No,
I think he's everything all at once.
No, because you're right. But you're right in that movie. Like, what's real then? What's the real timeline?
Yeah.
Right. So maybe I'm not using the right analogy. It's something. It's just.
I think you were everything all at once.
I feel like I went to sip for water at a water faucet, and they opened a fire hydrant. Is what every day feels like. Like, too much.
Yeah.
Maybe a
little bit of Groundhog Day too, because it's like, we're repeating all of this again.
I wish it was that too. I wish it wasn't different crap every different day.
Yeah.
I mean, because from that, like, I could learn something. Like,
True.
I don't know what it is. Because I work during the day for the state of Illinois, and so I'm writing memos about what all the impacts are going to be. I didn't have this kind of job 8 years ago, right? Like how people are going to fundamentally suffer in the state of Illinois when it comes to their health care, when it comes to migrants and their safety, when it comes to just their ability to have essential services. I have parents that message me and they're like, what is going to happen to my child's IEP if they eliminate the Department of Education? Yeah. So today I watched for hours, and way too long. No one should have to do this. Was watching the immigration hearings in the Senate today. Ooh. And it was horrible. It's a lot. And then I was talking, and then this whole thing with the healthcare, and the health insurance industry and Luigi Mangione. And, I don't know what to grab at anymore.
And you know, what's interesting is it's going to just keep being a lot.
Yeah.
Like I think we're just getting started, which I just.
Well, and I think that's why I want to be prepared. And trying to be prepared means you have to game it out or imagine what's going to happen.
Right.
But they're telling you what's going to happen. And I keep saying, well, I don't think it's going to be that bad, because if they really had mass deportations, then certainly they don't want people to suffer as far as like, okay, here's what I want to bring it down to, because I don't have the clip or anything, but in the hearings today, they brought one of the parents of, we've talked in the State of the Union, I don't know what year it was, this year, last year, when Marjorie Trader Greene wore that ridiculous, like, say her name crap.
Oh, yeah.
And, President Biden was like, what was that, right? And so there have been people who have been murdered by undocumented migrants or gotaways, or what some of them are called, where they are not held at the border and things like that. And so one of the mothers was testifying today about she talked about her daughter's assault and murder. She talked about having been kidnapped when she was young, so she kind of knew what her daughter had gone through. But the topic of the hearing was, what are the costs going to be? Right. So at the end, when they all spoke, she's like, you're what, and she talked about during her thing about why I voted for Trump, why Trump should be president. He's the only one talking about keeping our border secure and all and it's hard for me because she's a mom who has suffered a tragic loss. And at the same time, I have been sexually assaulted. I have suffered a tragic loss in my life. I mean, there's so many different elements, like so many different people have catastrophes in their lives, right? Like my brother was murdered by a chubby white guy. I don't hate all chubby white guys.
Right.
So it's like, and yes, I understand that he was here illegally. Had he not been across the border, then they wouldn't have crossed paths. Like all the millions of things that lead to people interacting with each other is impossible to manage.
Yeah.
And our border has been a disaster for decades.
Republican presidents, Democratic presidents, it's like everyone's like, we need to take care of our veterans. I was like, well, somebody please do then, because I've been hearing that for the last few decades.
And again, though, and I've said this before, and one of the reasons I was saying that I don't think it's going to be mass deportations of 13 million people, because I will tell you something, there are corporations and billionaires that don't want that to happen either, because otherwise that cuts into their friggin' profits.
They have to pay people a living wage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do that.
No.
They don't want unions to thrive and demand and bargain and to get what they're owed.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want to do that.
Well, that's going to be a hit to the budget, too, because they were saying today, I think it was Tom Hartman, that migrants or undocumented individuals, they still pay payroll taxes and they pay sales taxes because they buy things. And so that money's going to go out the window if you start kicking people out. And and then the employment issue, I mean, it's going to be, I don't think that they've thought this through, but then again, I don't think anything with the Trump administration is thought through.
Well, and the cost, one of the experts was talking about the cost of tracking everybody down, which, by the way, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of undocumented or migrants or refugees have been dispersed across the country because Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis just cast them out without documenting, without continually taking lists of names.
Yeah, right.
What are we doing? Without telling us they were coming. God, I'm so angry today, Dan.
It's okay. I'm here for you. It's okay.
And then one of the experts said it would cost, the cost of rounding up that many migrants would fund early childhood education for the Early Start program for 75 years. 75
years. Oh, okay. Also, Social Security might be solvent, too, at that point as well. Like, all of these things. Yeah.
So the mother, I think Moran, her last name is Moran. I can't remember her first name. I apologize. But she, at the end of the hearing, or towards the end of the hearing, she said, what I'm all hearing you say is, it's about profit. And it's like, lady, I understand that you have suffered tremendously, but it's literally the name of the hearing. Yeah. And budgets count. Like, that's how this country operates. That's what pretty much every committee hearing boils down to, whether it's Republicans trying to have Hunter Biden. They're like, we're not going to vote for a budget without the border stuff, and unless we can have this hearing about the president's son.
Funding or all of this. Yeah,
what do you think?
No, this was a House, right? Not a Senate.
It was a Senate hearing.
It was a Senate hearing.
It was a Senate hearing. It was Durbin and Lindsey Graham. Lady Lindsey.
Oh, okay.
And she was all clutching her pearls about, you guys, it was, I don't know that, I want to do it. I need to do it. And again, the reason I was doing it is because I work for an office that does have to break the checks. And I'm trying to get a handle on what is this going to look like, at least from my little corner of the universe, when people don't have access to Medicaid, when they don't have access to IEPs, when we are building. Lady Lindsay was talking about how, Lindsey Graham. Yeah, I know. I call her Lady Lindsay. She was talking about how we have to make more beds. We have to make sure we buy beds so that people don't, so we can in containment centers. So he was screw. I'm sorry, but screw people who are like, well, we're talking about profits. Yeah, that's what Lady Lindsay said was we need to buy more beds so they're not running around the country. There was a prosecutor from Pennsylvania who is undocumented. He's married to an American citizen. He has been here for decades, and he was talking about what the cost would be to his family, to his community. Are they going to deport his wife, too? They're going to separate that family?
Well, they don't want to separate families, so they just are going to get rid of the entire family. That's what Donald Trump said on Meet the Press. Because he doesn't want to separate families, so the whole family has to go. Yeah. That's what he said on Meet the Press. Yeah. So that's even if members of the family are legal citizens of the United States. Yeah. Yeah.
And Lady Lindsay said she would try to think about the Dreamers. Literally said, we'll try to see if we can come up with something humane. Literally said that.
She. No, I was talking about the orange guy.
You mean
he made a comment about how with Dreamers he's very flip floppy about it, and he's like, "Well, we'll." It's like his healthy. It's like I have a concept. It's like, well, we'll figure it out. Yeah. And he's like, well, I don't want to promise something and then pull a Joe Biden and say, like, I'm not going to pardon my son, but then I pardon my son. And I'm like, no, you actually just need a policy stance right now, dude. Dreamers, what's going to happen with Dreamers? Like, you can't just be like, well, I don't want to say this right now. No, people literally lives need to know what you're doing.
The voters did not care.
No, I know.
If there was actually a plan from the Orange. Did the Orange say anything about, because someone told me, was it my husband or somebody today said that the same thing about they may actually not have a plan for health care replacement.
Still a concept.
Still a concept.
Yeah. But he also took credit for, he said that he strengthened Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. And I was like, no, you tried to repeal it several times. So it's not, he's like, it's better because of me. And I was like, I don't think it is. It's not perfect. But it's an actual like piece of legislation that is saving lives, and people have access to health insurance and care and stuff like that.
Right.
I don't even know what his policy is. I mean, if you go through the Heritage or Project 2025, you can see what it is. But
Dan,
he doesn't know anything
the
about
orange has nothing to do with Project 2025.
No. Even though the vice president-elect wrote the foreword for the author of the book. And I'm
so tired of being just gaslit by these turds. Okay, so I have a question for you. Is it okay to call so I was listening to a podcast. I don't listen to podcasts, but today I'm just because as we mentioned yesterday, and I really am ticked still that I spent a week tiptoeing around it because I knew that there were so many people that were elevating the assassin to this hero worship and all these things. I addressed it and moved on. I'd seen what was going on online. And then yesterday we discussed it, and then still somebody online was like, I can't believe you're glad that he was killed. Go back. I'm waiting for the listener to send me the audio of me friggin' saying that.
Right.
But I was trying to listen to how other people, and it seems like there seems to be a summary, an outline of how people are doing it. They're saying, of course it was tragic, of course it was horrifying, and we should talk about the crisis of healthcare and health insurance in this country. Yeah. And apparently one of the things that Luigi Mangione pointed to was calling the insurance CEOs parasites, and the podcasters were talking about how this is what the other side does, that they diminish, they dehumanize, that we shouldn't. So my question is calling someone a turd in the same thing as because it's not I'm not calling them animals. I'm just calling I guess calling someone turd is not great either.
I think turd is fair.
I don't know. I think so. I'll leave it up to the audience. Is it here? Steve from the Gold Coast. Steve from the Gold Coast. How do you feel when I call someone like the Orange a turd or Lady Lindsay a turd?
I mean,
it's childish.
Not 1950. It's not 1954. I think we can live with turd.
That's true.
I'm looking for Lenny Bruce around the corner. I mean, come on.
Well, but I mean, I know that it's sophomoric, right? I think that as a comic of 30 years, I'm not shy and have no shame as it is. I've said a lot of things, I'll try to find because I also kind of like the idea of having a flushing noise as my sound effect for people. Yep. That's all there is. At any rate, well, thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. We've moved past Lenny Bruce, and I am in safe territory. I don't mean about being safe. I mean is it appropriate? How's that? Steve. Did I lose Steve?
Did we lose Steve?
We lost Steve. He's just so disappointed in me. He doesn't even have words.
He muted us.
Let's see what... Jim, what do you think? Is using turd okay? I'll put it to the listeners. Do you have a different word you'd like me to use for these guys? For these people? Jim? I've lost everybody. They're so disappointed in me. They don't...
Oh, here we go.
Hey, Jim.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. When we're in the doctor's office or in a hospital room, we should look at each other in the eye and say we had a person run for president who wanted to call healthcare a human right.
Yep.
If we're sitting in this hospital staring at each other, worrying about how we're going to get treated, when we had an opportunity to vote for somebody who said that health care was a human right. And the last person to do that was FDR, and if he would have lived that term, we would have had health insurance. Because he said a person without health care is not a happy person and not a productive person, which is obvious.
Yeah.
But what about how about this nut, the border czar that came here? Paul pointed out Jones. I didn't hear about it. I was kind of under the weather today. He said, "Oh, our mayor stinks and our governor stinks."
Yep, sucks. He said sucks. This guy, this border guy, Horman or whatever his name is, said that our mayor sucks and our governor sucks, and we're going to be the worst. That we're ground zero for mass deportations, folks. So they're talking about basically occupying Chicago.
Oh my God! Well, you better lay low, whoever that guy is, because he might be the first guy deported.
Well, and it's funny and I texted this in because I said I mentioned you as well, Jim. I texted the station. I said every time that Paul and Jim call in, you guys give me life because Paul literally says he calls and he goes, "Tom Homan sucks."
That's because that's what he said about
exactly. Yeah.
Well, I was under the weather when I heard Paul call. Then I thought it over. I thought, my God, who would have the nerve to do that in Chicago?
Yep.
I mean, the nerve of these people. And then what about Kash Patel? He's the FBI director.
Yeah.
Can you get any crazier than that? A man who put out the 2,000 mules, and he's grifted about $1 million off of Trump merchandise. He sold everything. Trump is selling $2 bills now with his face on it.
Did you get the cologne?
No, I got a stack of them for Christmas. I'm going to use them at the track. I'm going to use them at the the alternative track where they run I don't know what. But anyway, my point: he's selling $2 bills. He's selling coins. He's got coins with his two hands in a prayer, like in a prayer. The ministers are out of their minds. They're so happy that Trump got elected. They got one minister who I call, and he said, "Oh, the Democrats, we found out they were cheating in the election in Virginia. They were cheating in the election." So I call up, I say, your minister, I don't know if you read the 8th commandment, but it's also not bear false witness. He's lying through his teeth because he doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, anyway, he has one of his stooges call me, but they're so happy that Trump got in. Why? It must be they think a national abortion ban.
That's what they're hoping.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
And to me, that's really going to be tragic. Because the truth of the matter, let's face it, it'll go right back to abortions as usual, but it'll be all underground abortions or whatever. People will be scrambling to get the pill and all this other stuff for no reason.
Right.
And it's always the people who have other difficult circumstances that suffer the most.
Well, and the thing is, you can't ban abortions. You can ban safe abortions. And if you have money, you will always find a way to get an abortion.
But it's too much. 50 years ago, you think anybody raised an eyebrow? I went to a Catholic college. I had nuns, Dominican nuns. Nobody raised an eyebrow when they passed a safe abortion. Nobody.
Right.
In fact, those particular nuns, got on the bus for Obamacare. The Dominican nuns for Obamacare.
I remember
that's all they cared about. That's all they cared about was national health insurance. They drove me insane about it. That's all I talked about. But then some of the people get, we're going to get abortions. We don't care about that. We want health care for everybody. You get the picture? I mean, this is absurd. But Kash Patel? I mean, what is this? Well, he's got the right name, Kash. He's already cashed in for about $1 million. I mean, these people, and how about this is thieves. It's out now thieves. We got to go to court for a parking ticket and all this other baloney.
Yeah.
And this is the law and order party.
Well, what's interesting, and I know we're running a little late here. But before I left the house today, CNN, they were doing a report that during Trump's administration, the DOJ was pulling records and secretly pulling information on several individuals, a lot of Democrats, but also Kash Patel, and because he was a staffer, I believe. It was a new report. It was they were talking through it, and I was like, oh, that's cute. So that's who you want to be the head of the FBI because you know things about maybe allegedly. Who knows?
Danny, I give you credit. You're a masochist for getting this information. And you guys have a good show. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Let's take a quick break here. We'll take some more phone calls when we come back. I did get one text in regards to whether or not turd would be acceptable language for me to use on the show. Because I want to be able to how's this sound if I say, like someone like Lady Lindsay's a turd? Does that, wait.
It works. Let's go.
That's a little graphic. That sounded too splashy, didn't it? Like, I want it to be a little more. I want to have more I want to have good water pressure, but I want it to be like just a whoosh, you know what I mean? Like But that seems like a lot of splashing.
That was a lot.
You ever have like a flush so strong you're like, is this a bidet? No, it's not a bidet. All right, let's take a break here. By the way, someone texted sophomoric wins elections. Yeah, I mean, why do I have to have the higher ground? Why do I have to be the better person? You know what? Oh, there's a new low road Democrats.
Oh, really?
I want to be a low road. Everybody okay with me being a low road Democrat?
I'm there with you.
I think I'm going to go in with
this whole we go high thing. I'm going
Mueller,
low.
she wrote. Yep. So I'm going low road, folks. We're going to do this. It's going to be like this for the next 4 years. Hold on. Here we go. Wait. Yeah, I'm not crazy about that
Yeah,
one. More after this with Dan Schaefer at WCPT 820.
Amy Goodman reports on the news stories rarely covered by the corporate media. Democracy Now!
The UN's Humanitarian Affairs Office warned Palestinian children are at high risk of injury or death from unexploded ordnance left after more than 13 months of Israeli attacks. 8-year-old Mohammed Karmash, this is his mother.
No one was there to tell him that these are explosives that the Israelis throw.
Democracy Now! Weekday evenings at 10 on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
Patti Vasquez is taking your calls now at 773-763-9278. Driving it home with Patti Vasquez now on WCPT 820.
Well, Dan Schaefer just pointed out, our guest co-host today, host of Tuesdays with Josie, you can find anywhere that podcasts are available, that asking the audience whether or not turd is an acceptable word to use when we're talking about folks like the Orange and Lady Lindsay. And Steve from Chicago wants to chime. Look at
the number of turds that I'm seeing on the screen is not the callers, just the word turd.
Steve, what are your thoughts?
Well, Patty, you know that nobody hates Donald Trump more than I do. But if we're going to say that dehumanizing language is wrong, then dehumanizing language is wrong. So if we're going to criticize him for calling people vermin,
right? So
then we shouldn't call him a turd.
But a turd, but a turd is something you flush and wipe, right? Like a vermin is something you squash and kill. Like it's more inanimate. So it's. And here's the thing: the reason I think I don't know why turd because I remember being in a meeting at WGN, and I won't name the host, but they stood up and they said, "I don't want to be the turd in the punch bowl," and I have never been able to shake that because they were. When you say you are that,
it's kind of like I'm not. I don't mean to be racist, but
exactly. But anyway, okay. That's why it sticks with me. So what kind of language would you want me to use? I mean, like jackhole. Jackhole doesn't really work. I can't say
Jackhole is fine. Traitor, rapist. I mean, anything that he is.
Can we call him the Orange Mussolini?
If you're, there you go. If you're going to say that dehumanizing language is wrong, then it's wrong.
Okay.
And I have to admit, I am guilty of this myself, but I also feel that in some ways calling Lindsey Graham Lady Lindsay is a little misogynistic because it seems to imply that, well, if he's a woman, there's something wrong with him, or there's something less than a man.
That's fair, too. I will stop doing that as well. But in the sense that he doesn't seem to want to... Yes.
And
there it is.
Come out of the closet.
That's the one. Yeah.
But he used to wreck balls till the sun came out.
And that's not fair for me to do either.
He's one of those people that I've said, when Russia finally drops the intel that they have on these people, I am torn between it whether I want to see the video of him or not.
Yes, right? Yeah. All right, fair enough. Thank you for the input. I appreciate it. I will take notes later this evening and take it to heart.
Yeah.
And decide where it falls in the low road Democrats. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Let's go to Steve, and Homewood has some thoughts on turds. What's on your mind, Steve?
Hey, Patty. In defense of a good BM, I think they will forgive you for comparing a good BM with the Orange Man.
Okay.
It's your show. You can vent it out and call him whatever you want. Just don't get fined from the FCC.
Correct.
They just protect the FCC license.
Because he's not worth it.
Right. And I don't think I want to say turd for 4 years. It's not going to last. Yeah, it gets it's aggressive. Jackhole. I have to find.
You'll come up with something else really good.
I kind of like this crowdsourcing element. I'm enjoying this very much.
One per quarter. We'll pick up new.
Yeah. Right. What are we going to call him for winter? What's the winter? What's the winter title? Yes. Thank you, Steve.
So one more quickie.
Yes.
President Biden. You talk about gaslighting.
Yeah.
They can go take a flying,
yep.
You know what, because it's, first of all, it's the president's prerogative to pardon whoever he darn well pleases. Number two, and that's an act of Congress. And number two, he changed his mind. Big deal. you know what? And it's his son. And if he can't support and protect his son, who was unfairly prosecuted to begin with, and they were treating him in a manner that they didn't treat anybody else, whoever was charged with those crimes. So it was an obvious political witch hunt itself. So they can take a flying turd, as far as I'm concerned. And I hope the president pardons more people before he leaves office.
Agreed.
Well, Steve, I would say, I just looked it up now. If Biden wanted to catch up to Trump's number of pardons, he would need to do a roughly 200 between now and January 20th.
Wow.
Because Donald Trump was 237, Biden's at 27. And mind you, the current nominee to be the ambassador to France, which is also Donald Trump's son-in-law's father, was pardoned, and he is going to be, allegedly, is appointed to be the ambassador to France. And that's a pardoned person because he broke the law and was pardoned and now may be the ambassador to France. So everybody needs to check themselves.
Yep, exactly. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Steve.
I think a record is part of the job requirement now.
Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, convicted felon. Okay, you get in. Good deal.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. Take care.
Bye.
Let's get to Cindy in Michigan. Cindy, good to hear from you, my friend. What's on your mind?
Hi. I just wanted to quick say a word that I would like to suggest, and I even like the way it sounds.
Ooh, yes.
Weenie.
Weenie.
That's okay.
It's a weenie.
Because it's kind of like calling it a
because it could.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, instead of a turd, you might. Well, you could still use turd, but you might get tired of turd, and then just go to weenie. Yeah, weenie.
I love that Cindy's like, concerned about my pace for the next 4 years. Want to give me some options? Just a weenie.
Well, maybe turd for the rest of the year.
Real quick,
teeny weenie. Yes.
Kick off the new year with weenie.
Say something. If I could say something about that CEO shooter guy. Obviously, he had a higher education.
Yeah.
He seemed to have a very well placed, place in society, financially, apparently. And and then he went. He tried to solve this problem, whatever emotional issue he was having with this. He solves it this way. Which is completely makes no sense.
Right.
And to me, this is the philosophy I carry. Intelligent people are obligated to work out our issues with intelligence.
Yeah.
We are not allowed to just go to the last resort of a gun.
I will say,
not happening.
As much as it comes down when we've had these conversations about mental health, it sounds like he withdrew from his family and friends months and months ago and was spiraling, was dealing with a health issue as well. While he is intelligent, has a degree and master's from the University of Pennsylvania in engineering, and his very well read and
absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if he was being cut off of pain medication, because that's one thing that the medical establishment will do at some point.
Yep.
If you're not going to participate in physical therapy, if you're not going to participate in getting this thing worked out in this way, then you can't just keep coming in for meds. So we're going to find out a lot more about how he was actually handling his physical issues and then turned in this direction. I don't approve of his methods at all, but I do sympathize with the cost of what's happening to us and how hard it is to get, you well know from having a child with issues that, there's medical expenses to everything.
I was about to say, and what I'm actually thinking about right now as you were speaking is that, I have been very frustrated with the people who have treated Declan. I do believe that they that the care was not what it should have been because he's nonverbal. I do think that Shirley Ryan just because he's too difficult and complicated, scraped us off. And I've dealt with that for quite a few months. And at any rate, it's something I'll write about someday. But today, I have to run because we're running late, Cindy. Thank you so much for that, and I agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Take care. Really good point. Let me take a break here. We're going to talk to Dan Schaefer from the Recombobulation area, and then we'll take your calls right after on WCPT 820 Heartland Signal. We'll have to ask our good friend Dan about whether or not if I should use the word turd.
Hey, Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
You're listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez on WCPT 820.
I have to apologize to our good friend Dan Schaefer. Well, both of them actually. Dan Schaefer in the studio, and Dan Schaefer, Wisconsin Recombobulation editor, creator, writer, and on all the radio shows across Wisconsin and here in Chicago. We got hung up on the word turd and whether or not it would be it's okay for me to call people turds and not. But I don't even know why I'm sharing that with you, Dan Schaefer. But that's what happened. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. A little discombobulated right now, but
you can recombobulate you.
We're piecing things together here.
Yes,
there are no rules anymore. Say whatever you want.
Well, that's the thing. Is that maybe it's situational, right? Maybe when someone's truly being a Turk. I mean, I just can't. Well, I was listening to a podcast. I think it was on the Young Turks, and maybe that's why turd. Not that they're turds, but it was easy to get there. Mm-hmm. But they were criticizing like Democrats, like we shouldn't sink to the level of dehumanizing and calling people parasites and animals and things like that, because that's what the Republicans do. And I really want to call some people a turd. Is all I'm saying, Dan.
I think we'll allow it. We'll allow it.
Situationally, maybe that's what we'll say. Okay, where do you want to start? Because I know that you have done a piece on what Democrats need to do, and I know a lot of people are talking about that. Ben Cominos is coming on at 6, and he and I have had these conversations about and obviously very quickly. Oh my gosh, my brain is fried, you guys. Bernie Sanders has been criticizing Democrats and how they ran and what they need to do too. So what are your thoughts as we're a couple of weeks away from this just incredibly crushing loss?
Well, I think there are, there's so many different takeaways. From what happened, and I think the economic populism of it all, does seem to resonate. I was never an especially big Bernie fan as a candidate, even though I agree with him on a lot of his policies.
Right.
So I do think that does resonate to a certain extent. I want to point out one thing that I think has kind of flown under the radar in some of this post-election analysis, which is immigration policy. And I think Democrats clearly lost on this issue.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is that I really don't know what Democrats stand for when it comes to immigration. It just always seems to be reacting to something else and not standing on principle. And I don't really – and that is kind of what I think Democrats need to prioritize going forward, and not necessarily have an immigration policy that is just in the shadow of Trump and just kind of being Republican light and whatever it is. I think Democrats need to figure out what exactly they do stand for when it comes to immigration, because it's clear that they are losing on this issue. And I think for the duration of the campaign, whenever you bring this issue up, I think Democrats were far more inclined to change the subject on this than to have the conversation. And I think they were just like, well, it's a losing issue for us. Let's talk about abortion. Let's talk about health care. Let's talk about something that is, polling a little bit more favorably in our win column. But I think avoiding the issue, and I think the Biden administration's policy has just been kind of incoherent, going from thing to thing, reacting from, kind of the family separation policy of the Trump years to reversing one, executive order, but not another. And then, it just doesn't seem like there is a story, a narrative, a message, a coherent policy that Democrats have when it comes to immigration.
And I was talking to friends of mine and actually a former state elected about how, I will admit this, and I think that the numbers bear it out in Chicago. We handled it terribly in Chicago when people were bused here. I still don't know why we did not turn buses away at the Illinois border and say, you are trafficking human beings, right? Like, have a hard line on something. And don't spend money hand over fist and without any accountability. Dan, in Chicago, there was one investigative report about a location up in Rogers Park at the High Ridge Y. They spent millions of dollars over 1 month paying nurses and like security, like $150 an hour, 12-hour days, 7 days a week. It was crazy.
Third-party vendors that were taking advantage of the system.
Right, because
but you mentioned human trafficking.
Yeah.
Like literally, allegedly, Greg Abbott.
Yeah, just sending people off without keeping lists and record of who is being sent where either. Right. So part of the reason we have people, we don't know where people are, is because they would gather them up and just send them, and not even tell the people on the buses where they were going, wouldn't tell the states, New York, Chicago, Illinois,
in many cases,
Massachusetts.
they told them they were going to find, they had jobs waiting for them.
They were lied to.
Stuff that,
But here's the thing. So just coming back is that Democrats just go, okay, fine, we are a sanctuary city. We said we would do it. Let's do it, and then we don't do it well. So I agree in the sense that, like, so what is our policy? Is it a path to and then to your point about Democrats would just deflect or change the subject. I mean, no one was listening to us when we said we had legislation and Trump killed it. It doesn't matter. When you're explaining, you're losing. So just tell, what are you going to do? That's what happened. What are you going to do? Because no one cares what actually happened, apparently, Dan. Why am I so angry? Hi.
Well, I think part of that too is that so they had this tough border bill that passed whatever, and then Trump was able to kill it. Well, I don't think that's a particularly effective message either, which is that, hey, we passed the Trump border bill, or we passed this border bill, but Trump wouldn't let us pass it.
Right.
Like, I think that is an argument that puts you in a position of weakness too. So I think this is, number one on the list as far as like a policy discussion for Democrats going forward, because you can have all the discussions about messaging, about candidates, about individuals, about party structure, about all of these different things. But I think when it comes to policy, Democrats really need to figure out what they actually stand for when it comes to immigration, because I don't think it is clear to people. And I think in that void, it just becomes, they're for open borders. They're for, whatever the right affixes onto what their position might be, when, because in the lack of actually going out and articulating what you stand for, you're just letting other people to define that for you.
Well, I'll tell you what Democrats should stand hard and firm on, which is holding employers accountable when they hire, sponsor, and they want to underpay people and have cheap labor. So I think that going after corporations, after businesses that are illegally hiring people, paying them cash, knowingly are having people that are undocumented work for them illegally here in the country.
Yeah. So, the other Dan Schaefer question. So, if there is a mass deportation, I know that Wisconsin, I went to college in Wisconsin. I know that there is a huge agriculture industry, and there's a bunch of other various industries, including paper and textiles, things of that. How would a proposed mass deportation affect the Wisconsin economy?
Yeah, I think it would have a profound effect, and this is, something we've been on across the civic media network. We've been, talking to farmers and talking to people in rural areas in particular about this, and they're really raising alarms because there are the fact that we have not created a path to citizenship for many of the migrant workers who come to work on Wisconsin dairy farms, is creating this kind of permanent limbo status for a lot of the people working there. But a lot of these dairy farms, they do really heavily rely on, immigrants who are working and, working on the farms and producing, producing milk and all sorts of different things. So I think that is, I think there is a real concern in Wisconsin for what's going to happen and how exactly this is going to play out. Because, just like so many other things with Trump, he'll just say things and you don't know exactly what they're going to mean, once the rubber hits the road. So right now, I think, we're in this weird liminal space between the election and the inauguration, and everybody's just kind of speculating and basing things on, what certain cabinet appointees are saying in the media and whatever else. But I think we're going to have to really see what happens once the rubber meets the road here.
Oof. Yeah, it's going to be painful, needless to say. And to immigration, I know that Governor Evers has made a statement in regards to what Wisconsin how they will react. What are some of the other topics that you're talking about? What's on Wisconsinites' minds?
Yeah, I think that there's a number of things as we kind of are inching towards the Trump 2.0 years. And I think, figuring out a lot of that is a big piece of it, figuring out what it's going to mean to have, tariffs on Wisconsin manufacturers and how that's going to impact the economy. So that is certainly something that we're monitoring here. But then, on the Democratic side, we're also seeing our state party chair, Ben Wickler, take a step into the national stage.
I've been seeing a lot of him. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of him lately. I don't know if you were able to catch him last night with Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, but he was the guest on the show with Jon Stewart last night. Gave a terrific interview about kind of what he has been able to do in Wisconsin, what that could mean brought to the national stage. And I think it's really interesting that we're kind of looking at this DNC chair race, and it is a race of two Midwesterners who are, the two most likely winners in this, with Ben Wickler and then Ken Martin, the head of the Minnesota Democrats. So I think, there's going to be some real passive-aggressive back and forth between these two Midwesterners running for this seat, right? It's some Midwest nice comments maybe back and forth here, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Which was my least favorite part of the debate with J.D. Vance. It was my least favorite part. Was like, I gotta agree with the guy. Shut up. Get mean, Tim. At any rate.
Yeah. I hope you change your oil, though, so it'll be fine.
Oh, my God.
I know. Too soon. Sorry.
You know how nice it would... Okay, let's not live in the what-ifs.
Dan, also the Wisconsin State Supreme Court, I know that there is somebody retiring, and there is concern about that seat. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is going to be big. This is going to be, we talked so much a couple years ago about the election of Jana Protasewicz and flipping the balance of power in the state Supreme Court to a 4-3 liberal majority. Well, one of those four liberal justices is retiring at the end of her 4-year term, and so now we're back at it again. Wisconsin doesn't really get to take any plays off here. We're right back at it. It's going to be campaign season come January, February, into the April 1st. Spring election that will again decide the balance of power. So we've got Susan Crawford, who is the judge endorsed by the Wisconsin Democrats. It doesn't look like there's going to be an especially crowded primary for this race. I think we're just going to have the conservative candidate and the liberal candidate. And the conservative candidate is Brad Schimmel. He is the former Republican Attorney General in the state, very far right, especially on a lot of kind of social issues, very far right on abortion. So that's going to be a really big deal. And then with the recent ruling on Act 10, the widely known, very controversial anti-union law that Scott Walker passed at the very early days of his administration, that was just overturned by a Dane County judge, and that is likely headed on appeal to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So that is going to be a really big issue for that. And then, we're right back into campaign season, Wisconsin. We've got about a 2-week break.
It's like we just left campaign season, and here we are again.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, we will be gearing up for Fibs for Wisconsin for the April Supreme Court race again. We'll be up in Walworth
we got to take our time to recombobulate here for a month or so, and then we're going to get right back at it.
Exactly. I hope it's a mild February and March is all I'm saying.
We'll dress
fine. I know.
Dress in layers. We'll be fine.
It'll be good. Well, thank you so much. We've been talking to Dan Schaefer, the editor, creator, and writer for the Recombobulation Area. Subscribe to his Substack, folks. Subscribe and get his newsletter. Support local journalism because we love the work that you do, Dan. Thank you so much for keeping us up to date on all things Wisconsin.
Thanks for having me. Be well.
You too. Talk to you next week. Let's take a break here. I know we have some calls on the line. I love talking to Dan. It's good stuff. And Dan. And
both
you too, Dan. Both Dan Schaefers. Dan Schaefer on Blue Sky, by the way. That's Dan Schaefer, Schafer. Dan Schaefer with the CH in studio with me. Host of Tuesdays with Josie, available wherever you listen to your podcast. More in a moment on WCPT 820 Heartland Signal.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Patti Vasquez is taking your calls now at 773-763-9278. Driving it home with Patti Vasquez now on WCPT 820.
I know that Dave from Hoffman Estates has been on hold for a while, and when I put him up on the board, you could hear him already talking. So, Dave, I have to apologize to you, Dave, because unfortunately, you would have been taken sooner had the subject line on your call had the word turd in it. So I had to group all the turd calls together in support or in opposition of using the word turd in reference to MAGA.
Okay, well,
anyway.
Seeing this is the season, wouldn't it be easier to just call him Mr. Hanky?
What is Mr. Hank?
The Christmas poo.
The Christmas poo?
South Park.
Oh.
He loves me and I love you.
Can I tell you a secret? I have only seen, this is so bizarre, I've only seen one full episode of South Park.
It is so funny.
And it is the episode that was yanked right afterwards. It was the Virgin Mary bleeding from her parts.
Okay, I don't know if I saw that.
Oh, you didn't, because they pulled it right away. Google it.
I retract my that's so funny.
She's bleeding from I was hysterical.
But Mr. Hanky is really funny. And everybody loves Mr. Hanky.
Mr. Hanky? So if I do Mr. Hanky, then I can still do this then, right? I can do Mr. Hanky and then go like
Mr.
that.
Hanky.
I can't flush Mr. Hanky.
Because then he goes away.
Well, why am I...
Or you can lead it off and hidey-ho.
Heidi, that's exactly right.
Okay, this sounds too cute to be...
A little more serious one, though. On this...
the shooter, Luigi Mangione.
Luigi Mangione, shouldn't we all be calling him the alleged shooter yet? I mean, he still does have rights, correct?
Correct. Nothing's been proven.
Everybody calling him. They already. I'd hate to have some of the callers on the jury if you already got him guilty. It's the plus with that, how the emotions are on some of that. Like I think some have said even he may get acquittals, because there probably maybe 3 and 4 people, would identify, with the anger.
Yep. Yeah, well, I was thinking, not just the anger, but whether or not it is a mental health situation, right? So for folks who maybe haven't, I've only seen the image recently. He has like these pins. There was something wrong with his vertebrae in his spine, so he has these like 4-inch pins in his spine, and was they were interviewing friends of his because he had left for Hawaii in the hopes of apparently recovering and feeling better. I don't know how he originally injured himself, but they said that he would try to be active, and it would take him a whole week for him to recover. So I mean, like, there are instances where people maybe are vulnerable mentally to a health crisis, and it tips the balance. And if that's not being managed, whether by choice or by medical professionals, you're in a dangerous situation.
Yeah. You know what? They're giving the credit to the one at McDonald's. I also have said before, the first one was that young lady that he was flirting with at the Starbucks. I mean, had he not taken off that mask, they had no idea who this guy is.
Yep, I heard that as well, because he pulled his mask down to flirt, they think. Well, he also pulled his mask down at McDonald's to eat, and so while he may have a double degree from the University of Pennsylvania, as my dad would say, he ain't that bright, is he? He got pinched pretty easily by somebody at McDonald's.
Had he not originally pulled it off, they would have no idea who they were looking for.
Yeah.
Because he was not in the system, and the other dumb thing he did, though, too, he carried that gun with him and stuff, and he didn't, toss that. But it's not here nor there, but and then on that Hegseth, read the other day, where he plans to cut veterans' health benefits that alarms the service members and ex-service members.
Yes, he was talking about privatizing the VA benefits, which is insane. And I was watching, I think it was on MSNBC I think it was MSNBC, and it was a retired Marine who actually helps veterans with their VA care, and he said, the only reason you want to privatize the VA system is because you don't understand what the VA system does for veterans. Right. Because it does a remarkable job for veterans. And that is scary. That is something that I think senators need to consider when they are doing their advise and consent. I really do.
Yeah, they a couple of years ago, they changed some of that where if somebody was beyond 25 or 50 miles away, that they could go to a regular hospital, but still get somewhat, it'd still be under the VA thing, because it's too far for them to go, to the nearest VA center. But
right.
with this, that little tidbit he got in that part for the private care, but they're scared that it could lead to the total dismantling of the veterans' health care, like you're saying. So
yep.
There are a lot of institutional investors that would love to get access to the money that is funding the VA.
Oh, my God.
And, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're right. Well, let me clear off. I'm sure there's somebody else waiting.
Appreciate your patience with me. Next time you have to use the key word. I'm kidding.
Yeah, turd.
I'll just say, hi-de-ho. Good night.
Take care. Let's get to Bill in northern Wisconsin. Hey, Bill, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind, my friend?
Hi, Patty. I was just going to suggest hammer home. I will not refer to this orange character as president.
Right.
I might refer to him as another PR word with one syllable, but not president. I will refer to him as felon Trump, and
felon
I think that
Trump.
needs to be hammered home.
Yeah, I think felon Trump works.
I do not ever want to hear any Republican, and notice how I'm pronouncing that last syllable, because they have gotten so good at their salesmanship, they could sell a deep freezer to an Eskimo. And I will refer to him as felon Trump for the next 4 years. He is not my president, that's for sure. Thanks for taking my call.
Hold on, did I get it? Thank you. I agree with him.
That was like Law and Order. Okay,
yeah, I think it's going to be felon Trump. It'll be felon. I like that.
Looking around.
Felon Trump. Other people have said Orange Menace, Orange Hitler. I've never been comfortable with using that, but the Orange Menace works. Let's see what somebody else shared. I don't know what the other ones were. Okay, let's do the Judy. Judy, what's on your mind, Judy?
Hi, I don't want to introduce a whole other thing for us to worry about, but Trump is making it worse. I want everyone to watch a documentary on Netflix called Buy Now, which is partly the buying thing and what they are doing to make us buy, but it is the plastic thing that I'm always so upset about, because I hate to think that they're just poisoning us, water, plastic, whatever it is.
Yep.
And I
forever plastics.
Yeah, we're eating it.
Yep.
I mean, we're breathing it, we're eating it, we're drinking it.
Yeah.
And they had several people who had worked for Amazon, people who have worked for different companies, and how the one that made me the maddest was when they throw out perfectly good things so that, they don't, if they can't sell them,
yeah. There's stores that you'll have their dumpsters just filled with clothing because they don't want anyone else to have them. They won't even send them to TJ Maxx, to thrift stores, to homeless shelters, to other parts of the country that need it. So thank you for that. Buy Now on PBS. You can look it up. Thank you so much, Judy.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Judy.
And then I hope somebody. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
So nice to hear from you.
Always good to hear your voice.
Yes.
Thank you.
Love it. And my favorite thing now is people who are coloring the inside of boxes so you can't recycle them.
Oh, that's weird.
That I've never heard of. I will have to look into that.
Yeah, that's weird.
Well, when you read the recycle, they said you could recycle cardboard if it is, gray or brownish or whatever, like cornflakes. Cornflakes is food, but they don't color it. I have Signature, which is, I think, the Jewel brand, and this box happens to be hemorrhoidal ointment.
Oh, goodness.
We can say that in the air.
Yes, you can. Ooh, no, I guess I can't call them hemorrhoids either. He gives me... Okay, anyway, go ahead. Go ahead, Judy.
Anyway, I opened it up, and I thought, I wonder if I can recycle it. No. The whole inside is painted or stained or whatever.
I thought you meant people were getting packages from Amazon and painting them. Okay. And I was like, why are they painting them unless they're crafting, which is just reusing? Now I see companies are coating the inside of their boxes, making them unrecyclable, which, you know what? I'll bet you someone like Uline or one of those turd-like companies. I can call a company turd-like.
You could,
right? Because that's not an object. That's
Uline,
a turd-like.
That's a very deserving title for Uline. Yes.
That might be what it is, because they create paper products. So
and they said, and that egg company that advertises that they're free-range chickens and it's so good for you, and they put it in styrofoam. I have been
don't even get me started
for years.
Don't even get me started on styrofoam. That should just be outlawed across the board.
It's good, and they are putting eggs in it.
There you go. Well, thank you so much.
So thank you. I'll get off now.
I'm late for the news, but I still
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Judy. And let me get to Naomi, who's in Santa Monica. Am I saying your name correctly, my friend?
Yes, Naomi, correct.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Thanks for calling. Is your first time calling in?
Yes.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So I was listening to your contest about the name, Turd.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I mentioned 3 to Lady B, and she told me it was okay to say it online, but I'm not going to because she didn't.
I love that you checked.
I'm going to say the others, though. Okay, so I have a selection.
Okay.
One is Kanzi PR, the one built, that word. Then there's Teeny Weeny.
Okay.
She loved that one. Teeny Weeny. And Chicken Little. And Yellow Jello.
Yellow Jello, Chicken
I like
Weenie.
that.
I like all of these.
Yes.
Chicken Little, Teeny Weenie.
Teeny Weenie.
I want to know.
Lady B loves Teeny Weenie. She cracked up.
What's the one that you said she can't say, or she doesn't think you should say? Can she say it?
Oh, no. I asked her. I wasn't sure if I could say Kanzi PR.
Oh, I see. Yes, gotcha.
Thank you for checking.
I think another listener said he was thinking.
He said it was okay, but Bill didn't say it, so I decided not to say it.
Can I say it, Lady B? Oh, Lady B's biting her finger. She's like, I'm not sure.
I can say
All
that
right.
I'm not an employee here.
Yeah, but it's my show. I can dump you. I appreciate that so much, Naomi. Please don't let this be the last time you call, all right?
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. You two take care. Let's take a break here, and we'll come back with Ben Cominos from Outside the Box on WHBY in Appleton, Wisconsin.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Driving it home with Patti Vasquez, Patti Vasquez.
From global conflicts to greenhouse gases, the folks refusing to wear masks says, and politicians getting caught grabbing asses says, she's driving it home with Patti Vasquez.
Hello, and thank you for joining us as we drive it home. Want to say hello to our friends listening in the evening on KTNF AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. In studio, we have guest co-host Dan Schaefer, the host of Tuesdays with Josie. You can find wherever you find your podcast, just like you can find Driving It Home with me, Patti Vasquez, on our heartlandsignal.com website, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And actually, if you subscribe to my podcast, you'll be able to pick up some of the full podcast or our featured interviews. And right now, our featured interview for this show is Ben Cominos, the host of Outside the Box on WHBY in Appleton, Wisconsin. You can go to WHBY.com to catch his show. Dan, I was on the phone with Ben Cominos earlier today, and the debate about whether or not using the word turd to describe the incoming president was acceptable. Where do you stand on using language like that when it comes to someone like the president? Ben?
It's so interesting you bring that up. I just received I didn't. My general manager received a station that I'm cussing too much talking about politics, and that a college-educated person should have a better vocabulary. So apparently I speak very crassly about it, so I come down on the positive side.
Well, mostly because I want, and it's not entirely because I want to be able to use sound effects, but it's also because I want to use sound effects. Is all I'm saying.
It's also hard not to cuss these days.
To do it.
Yeah, I mean, just a little of this is all I'm saying. Hold on, is it playing? Like that. I'm not above using a toilet flushing, is all I'm saying, Ben.
Oh, that's perfect. I read a study to back up my point. It turns out people that cuss have a more firm grasp of vocabulary, according to some studies. You can choose to believe that if you'd like. I am.
Right. Now, Ben, within the guidelines of the FCC, what are some of the words that a listener was angry with you about? Like crap. Like I say crap a lot. Jackhole. I say jack. Someone suggested jackwagon for MAGA.
Well, so I have a running bit where anytime I say the name Elon Musk, I go, and remember, he's a dumbass. And it's every time I say his name or, something to that effect. So when you're speaking to an audience as old as me, I drop some PO'd here and there. But I do it within reason. I was a producer for over 4 years, so they beat into our head, don't lose the license. So I just I toe that line, but there's a little edge to the show for sure.
I think Elon Musk is a pretty offensive name or statement anyway, personally.
Yeah, honestly.
I don't think that I just don't think that dumbass is that I
don't think so either.
But I've had this problem with listeners in the past, not here because I think they carry as much rage as many of us do, but at my former radio station, yes, there were people that would complain about using the word sucks, which brings me, because we were talking about the Puerto Rican Day Parade, and this guy, I was actually quoting someone on Facebook who thought the Puerto Rican Pride Parade sucked, and then a listener got mad that I was saying that word. So you know what I did, Ben? Because they texted in.
What's that?
I called them on the air.
I remember you doing that.
It was amazing.
Oh, yes.
It's one of my favorite things I've ever done in my entire life. And then
I love that.
And then they didn't answer. Went to their voicemail. It was because the woman was telling me and Melissa Dupre, who is Puerto Rican, and I'm Latina of Mexican descent, and she was telling us that we needed to learn English because we needed a bigger vocabulary if we use words like suck. And then she
what a cheap shot.
Yeah, and then we berated her on her voicemail, and then she texted back that she was sorry. She didn't realize what the context was. Anyway, to the word sucks. The incoming border czar says that Chicago's mayor sucks, and the governor. See, the thing is, they can be sophomoric and call our governor sucky, and I'm supposed to take a high road. I'm going low road Democrats with Mueller. She wrote. I don't know about you, Ben, but
100%. I wasn't in favor of the they go low, we go high when it was cool. I was over it. Yeah. I'm glad everyone's waking up to this now.
Ben is feeling very much like he's right today because I told him earlier today that he was right.
Yeah, right. Well, that was a good day. Go on.
Go on. Tell me about all the. Okay, so one of the things that I was telling Ben today that he's right about, which is Democrats need to really stick to their guns because they basically just nibble around the edges of fighting for labor and for people's rights. If they're going to continue to take money from big companies, they're not going to move the needle. If they're too afraid to get primaried and they don't vote the way, or if they're not in Congress, like their hair is on friggin' fire for the American people, then you don't belong there. But here's my question. Do you think that's enough to win races then, to not take money from corporations? I mean, I know that Bernie Sanders does it, but game that out for me.
So I think it is because last week the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Lena Khan, who, if you're familiar with her, she is, I'm not 100% sure of what ethnicity she is, but she is not a white person. She's a woman. She is the traditional liberal that would drive conservatives nuts in terms of her politics. She announced, and the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau, in conjunction with the FTC, announced that they were cracking down on a couple of different data companies that you and I have almost certainly never heard of, that have been slowly skimming our data and selling it without our knowledge. She posts this report to Twitter, and the responses underneath are more than 80% MAGAs, all saying Trump, keep Lena. Trump, this is one of the good ones. Trump, don't touch this one. And he's going to. Like, in no uncertain terms, he is pro-big business. He's going to tear her down. But what stinks is she's also attacking Uber. And Kamala Harris's brother-in-law was the chief legal officer of Uber. And there were multiple times. I had an individual who was feeding me Democratic guests 3 times a week during the election. And every single time I would say, please find me someone who is willing to speak to Kamala Harris's stance on antitrust because people care about this more than you realize. She never stood up and spoke out in favor of this, and you now see Trumpers on Twitter saying, do not touch this person, meaning they know who she is. And Democrats wouldn't jump on board. That's just one example. Like, it's everywhere. And, I mean, you can tell with this CEO situation, you can tell what's going on with the FTC. Conservatives would have jumped on board with that, but they couldn't commit to it because I don't believe they wanted to commit to it.
Yeah.
We need people to want to commit to it.
Yeah, no, I think that you're right, and we see that backlash. Ben Shapiro was getting backlash from his following turds. I'm sorry, I can't help
That's the word.
But this also played out on ballots across the country. People voting for issues that they like, abortion. Things like I can't even think what what you would think is progressive, right? They do want things to change, but they want Trump to be the guy that does. It makes no sense, but it's because Kamala Harris wasn't giving them any path.
Yeah, and to me, it a month removed, so much of it just felt forced. Like, I would love to see data on who believed her $25,000 for first-time home buyer would actually go through, and then it would have been beneficial, or her claims about corporate gouging during emergencies or whatever. It just kept seeming like her platform was getting more and more watered down. I mean, I'm the Bernie guy. At the end of the day, Joe Biden won running on forgiving student loans and focusing on so many and extra stimulus checks that ended up being much smaller than what was promised. And it's just, there is a desire for these kinds of things. I think it's making itself more and more evident with every passing week. And I said it to you, and I believe Dwayne was with you 2 weeks ago. I said, I am optimistic that Trumpers are actually going to wake up this time around, and that was part of what you were saying I was accurate about. They're waking up to this. They're saying it used to be Medicare for all is socialism. Now you have Ben Shapiro listeners saying, no, you're clearly pitting us against one another. That's becoming more apparent now. Like, yeah, they should have been here 15 years ago, but you know what? Welcome to the team. Let's go fix this.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, my question is, so Wisconsin actually had I don't know if they still do, a very decent health care system, Badger Care. Is that still as strong as it used to be, or has that kind of faltered?
So I'm not sure how familiar you are with our layout.
I went to college. I went to college in Wisconsin, so yeah.
Okay, I've only lived out here for about 2.5 years, so I've been learning as I go. They've been gerrymandered out here for 15 years. The long and short of it is 40 states have accepted Medicare expansion, billions of federal dollars to allow us to provide services to many more people. We are one of 10 states that still hasn't. We're on a list with Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas. Every state that you absolutely do not want to be on a list with is on that list, along with Wisconsin. And it's an incredibly embarrassing list to be on.
And that's because the governor would take it, but the legislature is not allowing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, exactly. And it's such a counterintuitive message because dang well that even if we don't get the federal dollars, it's not like they're going to be advocating it for it to be used in some other beneficial way. They just want it to go to tax cuts for the Defense Department.
Right.
It's so infuriating. Like, it's just that people, we don't need that money. It's like, but you also sit there and complain about Ukraine funding. So that's where it's going if we don't take it now. So what the hell are you doing? And it's such a self-defeating attitude sometimes.
Well, I find it the hypocrisy of a pro-life party not promoting life-saving coverage and healthcare accessibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That point's been proven 1,000 times over with that entire cruise.
So, Ben, after you and I spoke this morning, I worked during the day as well, and part of my research involved listening to the the Senate hearings about the cost of mass deportations. I don't know, did you catch any of it today on C-SPAN? Do you watch C-SPAN?
Yeah, I do watch C-SPAN. I didn't catch anything today, but I can probably speak to what you're talking about just because that hits especially hard in Wisconsin given the agricultural sector we have here and how dependent it is. So what did you hear?
So this was, and I believe, I might be mistaken, but I believe the hearing was on how much it would cost, what the effects would be on the economy. But one of the people that they had in the hearing was the mother of a woman who had been raped and murdered, right? And so she told her story. It was a very personal story, including her own. She talked about how she had even been abducted when she was 17. She got, she was able to get away. But she talked about how she kind of knew some of what her daughter went through. And then she also talked about why Americans voted for Trump and why we needed to have Trump protecting our borders so things like this didn't happen. And it's hard, that's not something you want to argue with. But at the end of the committee hearing, she said, everything that she'd heard because there were experts talking about. One expert said that rounding everybody up, if we deported millions of people, the cost would be enough to cover early start for 75 years for education, right? And so elements like that, how much food costs would go up, how much it would cost to, and Lindsey Graham talked about how we have to spend money on more beds, make sure we don't have any more gotaways and all these things. And the mother at the end said, all I'm hearing is you just want to make a profit. And I'm like, okay, you're not, this is such a disjointed sort of situation to have this. But of course you had people like Marsha Blackburn with stuff that these hearings are infuriating, right? Because they try to, they'll pull out someone's tweets from years ago or from last year, or you called Donald Trump a fascist.
And they bring up these big boards.
Oh my God, yes, the big boards. Yeah. Yeah. At any rate, as you mentioned, the agricultural landscape in Wisconsin would suffer incredibly by just casting out migrant workers, undocumented workers. And we were talking to Dan Schaefer in the last hour from the Recombobulation area. What do you think, Democrats, what territory would you like to see us stake out when it comes to policy on immigration and the border?
Yeah, so that's so frustrating to me because so much of the rhetoric surrounding this is just inaccurate. Like the Social Security paid by even undocumented immigrants when they get here, they contribute to the system overwhelmingly. And I feel like, to answer your question, Patty, this kind of answers, picks away at a bigger question here surrounding Democrats' capacity for messaging. Because neither you or I really care about the economics of it. We're both people, people, and I'm sure most people at your station kind of feel the same way. And we find ourselves reduced to arguing on behalf of people making it into this country based on the economic impact. But that being said, I feel like that's the only way to crack in with a lot of these people is to focus on that because for one reason or another, they don't care about the humanity of the situation. Right. Personally, I'm never going to understand it. I think the biggest mistake the Biden administration made was just acting like nothing was happening. As much as my show's called Outside the Box, right? I think differently than a lot of people. We could go into a deep conversation about how borders are just lines imaginary drawn on masses of land, but we got to defend it. 8 million people crossing the border is a lot, and to pretend like it wasn't happening, I think ticked a lot of people off. Why do people in Wisconsin care? They shouldn't. How do Republicans get them to care? I have no idea. But it's the reality of the situation. I don't think that these guys really hate them too much. It just has to be more well guarded than what was happening after they got rid of Title 42. Because as someone who couldn't care less, I still even acknowledge, yeah, that was a bit excessive, what was going on there. That was a bit of a ball drop. So I think just even putting on the window dressing of taking it more seriously, I think would be better for a lot of people.
What do you think about going after corporations and big businesses that hire undocumented workers and illegals so they can pay them less?
I love that idea.
Right?
I love that idea.
I mean,
that's such a good idea.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
Right. I don't understand why Democrats didn't do that. And my guess is it goes back to what you're talking about because they take money from them. Land developers,
dollars. Yeah.
Right. No, that's 100% accurate. And that is such a populist approach to not attack the worker and still punch up while highlighting that an issue exists. And I mean, realistically, somebody in the Democratic Party should be listening right now because I feel like that'll get some legs for sure.
Yeah, I don't get it, folks. I really don't, because I was talking to some leaders in labor here in Chicago, and they're worried, Ben. They are worried because they said that there's a land developer who has his sights on basically crushing the unions in Chicago. And my friend said, look, if labor falls in Chicago, we are screwed across the country.
Yeah. No, and I mean, that's very real, and it's an obvious answer to a problem that was plaguing Dems, which is probably why they never suggested it. I think that's just how they operate. I'll tell you before I hop. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but why doesn't Bernie Sanders even offer it? I haven't heard him say that. Go after the corporations that hire undocumented.
I'll be real. I haven't heard this floated in any circle. Like, this feels like an actual unique idea in an otherwise stagnant political world. Like, we go around and around in circles over the same ideas, building walls versus paths for dreamers versus all these different things. I think this is the perfect. I mean, you took what I literally just said about you got to attack the economics of it to get people on board. Based on the anti-billionaire, anti-major corporation attitude, I think there would be a major sentiment. What would your proposed solution be? What would we do with once you caught the corporations doing it, what would we do with the people who were infringing, though? Would they still stay here in your world?
I think so. We do definitely expel people who are here with, that have committed crimes, obviously committed crimes out the door. I think that once you do that, then there isn't as big of a lure to come here because they aren't providing the economics of it.
I mean, if I had Bernie's number, I'd call him now. Be like, why don't we run with this?
But reminder, Ben, if you break the law, you can still be elected president.
Yeah,
so that's convicted felon as president.
Yeah, please. That's the one thing I would make running gags on my show. I never covered the trial stuff because I knew you knew where this was all ending. I didn't think he was going to win, but I knew he was never.
I always said he was going to win because I knew he won by such a slim margin in 2016 that I will die mad from that. And I knew that it only takes a few, and it literally did. It wasn't a huge. It's not a mandate. He won on slim margins, but so they're all saying it's a mandate. But he did win. I'll admit that. But it was not a mandate across the country. Also, very low voter turnout as well. So it's kind of like the Nixon election, and yeah. But my audience is a lot of boomers. It's all generations, but there's a lot of boomers. I think I may have said this to Patty before, but I was screaming at the top of my lungs that Gen Z saved Democrats in 2020, 22, and 23. There were lines out the door at college campuses to vote for an off-year Supreme Court justice in Wisconsin because young people were showing up. And no matter what network you watch now, all they ever show you is 49%, 18 to 30 went Trump, 47% went Harris, trying to convince us that young people are switching. But when you look at the actual metrics behind the percentages, it was an 8.5% reduction for Harris and a 1.3 increase for Trump. Right.
Everybody just stayed home.
Yeah,
they
that's
didn't care
exactly
about
it.
Trump. It had nothing to do with that.
Active voters or people stayed on their couch. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's just bring a better candidate. That's all it is, and they will win in 2028. Yeah. But I don't know if they have that in them.
Are you involved in local stuff in Appleton or?
Yeah, I mean, I do like listening budget sessions. In this state, legitimately, since March of 2024, the legislature has not met because it's an off-budget year. And anytime Governor Evers tries to bring them in for a special session, there's enough Republicans that they gavel out immediately.
Okay. Because I have a good friend of mine who's on the Appleton School Board, and so if you need a contact, it'd be interesting to connect you to. Because it sounds like you have some really good ideas.
Yeah. I would be interested in talking for sure. I'm doing a public school segment tomorrow here. They met with Ron Johnson, to talk about budgets and whatnot. I'm sure that was very fruitful.
I'm sure it was, too.
All right. Well, my friend that's on the school board is much nicer than Ron Johnson. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Please. Yeah. Well, I'll get you my contact after the segment.
Definitely.
You were going to say one more thing before you went, Ben. I didn't mean to cut you off earlier.
Oh, so just to highlight, because you know how frustrated I get with our flock. They're already, you can tell the messaging is out about health care right now, just like it is with the voting, just like it was with the economy. They have Bloomberg reporters and a couple other publications. I don't know if you've seen this yet, saying actually as a percentage of what we pay, America is much lower than most other nations. I don't know why people are talking about our health care. this is a third example of just being told the problem isn't bad, be quiet, instead of, like, if this is their strategy going forward, we need someone in the party to stop this madness, because it's a month after an election that you just lost, and they're trying to convince us that if we have a $10,000 bill, but our insurance covers $6,000 of it, that's better than just getting charged $65 and paying the whole thing.
Right.
And they're trying to convince us we're on the good side of things here, and these are the Democrats doing this. And it's just like, when you're trying to convince righties and lefties that the health care is good, I don't know what you think you're going to do in 2028. It's infuriating, is what I was going to say.
I agree. Yeah. It's always great to catch up with you, Ben Cominos, the host of Outside the Box on WHBY in Appleton, Wisconsin. Go to hby.com. Where else do you want folks to find you?
You can catch me at Twitter, at Ben Cominos, just Dominoes with a C. I have a Blue Sky now, too. I'm only just starting to use it, but, it's all right over there. I'm getting used to it.
With the squishy liberals? It's mostly the squishy liberals.
Yeah, it's all right.
Better than Truth Social.
Yeah, well, you may as well. Yeah, that's how you balance it. You go to Truth Social.
I was on Truth Social last night. Trust me, that's much better than Truth Social.
Well,
I have to believe so.
We catch up with Ben twice a month. I'll talk to you in 2 weeks, my friend. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Let's take a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk to Barbara F. Walter about how civil wars start, because she wrote the book How Civil Wars Start. In a moment on WCPT 820 Heartland Signal in the studio with guest co-host Dan Schaefer, the host of Tuesdays with Josie, everywhere you find your podcasts.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
You're listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez on WCPT 820.
Thank you so much for joining us as we continue to drive it home. Joining me in studio is guest co-host Dan Schaefer, the host of Tuesdays with Josie, available wherever you find your podcast. And joining us on the line is author Barbara F. Walter, who is a political scientist, author, and professor of international affairs at the School of Global Policy and Strategy at the University of California, San Diego. And her book, How Civil Wars Started, is required reading for anyone invested in preserving our 246-year experiment in self-government. How are you doing this evening, Barbara?
I am great. It's great to be in Chicagoland. I went to school there.
Oh, you did? Where'd you go to school?
I am a U Chicago grad.
Hey, I'm sorry, Dan, I didn't have your mic on. Yeah, it's very cool. I currently have a maroon in college there. That's such a weird way to put it. My son Griffin is in his junior year at U Chicago.
Yeah, it's quite a place. It's intense. It's rich. There's no place like it. I'm really proud of him. He's getting his degree in history. So he's been very, sort of politically minded for a long time. Ever since he saw Sarah Palin shoot coyotes out of her helicopter, he was 5 years old. So I tell us a little bit about the genesis of this book and what you want to keep people mindful of. And I kind of have some thoughts about where we are since the election turned out the way it did. But first, tell us about what inspired you to write this book. Well, there's a story there, so interrupt me if it gets too boring, but it's a pretty interesting story. So I had been studying civil wars for almost 30 years, and I traveled to a lot of conflict places, and then in 2017, I was invited to serve on a task force run by the U.S. government called the Political Instability Task Force. And it's been around since 1994. One of their goals is to come up with a model, was to come up with a model that would help the U.S. government predict what countries around the world were likely to experience political instability and political violence in the next 2 years. And the task force was made up of two types of people. Half the task force were people like me, people who experts on conflict and violence, and half the task force were data analysts who worked for the government. And when the data analysts put together the model, they asked the experts to give them every possible factor that might lead a country towards political violence and instability. And the task force and the experts gave them 38 different factors. So kind of a laundry list or a kitchen sink approach to what might matter.
the data analysts went away, worked on the model, and when they came back, they said that only 2 factors were really highly predictive, and they weren't the 2 factors that the experts had expected. This was interesting to us. The first and the most important factor turned out to be whether a country was what the experts called anocracies. Anocracies, it's just a fancy term for a partial democracy. So it's a country or it's a government that holds elections. People go to vote. There, sometimes are different political parties. But whoever wins the election basically has very, very few checks and balances on what they can do. And oftentimes that person never loses another election. So your listeners should think about Viktor Orban in Hungary. That's sort of kind of a quintessential anocracy. The second factor that really mattered was whether citizens in those partial democracies organize their political or join political parties based mostly on their race, religion, or ethnicity rather than their political leaning. So instead of joining a party because you were a Democrat or a Republican, a communist or a capitalist, you joined a political party because you were Christian or Muslim, and you joined the Muslim party, or you joined the Serb party or the Croat party, or the white party or the black party. If a country had these 2 features, so it was a partial democracy and it had these identity-based parties, then the task force considered it at high risk of instability and violence, and we put it on a watch list. We actually called it the watch list, and we sent that to the White House. So what was really interesting to me about this model was that one, it was highly predictive. It was very good at its job, but well, let me take a step back. So the task force never, ever talked about the United States. So we would get together 4 times a year, and we would talk about Ethiopia, and we would talk about Venezuela and India and Syria, but we would never, ever talk about the United States. But if you took the model and you applied it to our own country, what you saw starting in 2016 was that both of these factors were emerging here, and they were actually emerging at a surprisingly fast rate. So that was really the impetus behind me writing this book, that our own government had this really pretty fantastic model that helped us identify the underlying conditions, these risk factors, these red flags that we should be looking out for in terms of wow, this country is not going in a good direction. But it hadn't been applied to the United States. So what my book does is basically do that.
And when you mentioned Turkey and Orban, because I think about the way, he, and this came up during the campaign. I think J.D. Vance pointed to him as sort of and several Republicans in the MAGA cult pointed to Orban as, and he was actually at Mar-a-Lago. They hold him up as an ideal, somebody who has taken over the way people are educated, has taken over the way people receive their information. I'm sure there's a lot of other ways they're manipulated. Are those some of the elements, some of the red flags that you're talking about?
Yeah. So one of the things that's really interesting is that in the 20th century, the way democracies died was usually through military coups. The military, who obviously in most countries is quite powerful, they decide, well, we don't want to have civilians telling us what to do. We're just going to take power ourselves. And so they'd have a coup and they put themselves in power. The 21st century is quite different, and Viktor Orban has kind of written the playbook of how you can do a non-military, non-violent, and legal coup in democracies where you get yourself elected. Oftentimes these individuals who we'll call them strongmen, individuals who run for election in democracies are often quite popular. They win elections, and then once they get in power, they slowly and systematically begin to unravel the guardrails of democracy. And before citizens know it, suddenly they're like, geez, we've lost a fair amount of rights. And we've lost some freedoms. And, geez, the press isn't free anymore. And opposition leaders keep disappearing. And the judicial system has been weaponized. And by the time citizens realize, they often don't have the power to reverse it. And Trump clearly has been enamored with Viktor Orban. He has met with him. We suspect that he's kind of, talking about various things having to do with power and democracy. And some of the things that Trump has said he's going to do when he comes into the White House are kind of straight out of Orban's playbook.
So, Barbara, so it's what you're explaining is kind of like the frog in the slowly boiling
Yes.
pot, right? And when you realize that the temperature has gotten to the extent that it has, but we just heard news about South Korea, right, where the president declared martial law, and that's not a slight boiling of the pot. That's we're literally just doing that, and that clearly backfired. How are you seeing? Because I will say that I view Donald Trump as a fascist, allegedly. I have to use the words.
Why are you worried about? What are you worried about legal ramifications?
I don't want you to lose your license.
That's not.
But I would say that that I view that, but what I'm viewing is a constant progression toward people adopting fascist ideals. Which is what we were talking about with Orban, and it's happening over and over. So how do we stop it? That's my question. Because I would like to not be in a fascist society.
Yeah. Well, like many things, when they're sold to the public, and this could be, we saw this with social media in its early days. We're seeing it with AI now. When changes are sold to the public, the public is only told about the potential benefits, and the benefits are usually presented as really, really big. So strong men like Orban and Bolsonaro in Brazil and Modi in India and Duterte in the Philippines and now Trump here in the United States, they sell the need for a strong man as a positive. What they do is they start talking about the threats that citizens are facing, whether those threats are real or made up, and they're often just a tinge of reality there, and then grossly exaggerated. And right now it's illegal immigrants and crime in the Philippines. It was drug violence and drug lords. And so they find something that citizens will sort of nod their heads and say, yeah, that's scary. Boy, that could really hurt my family. And then the strong man promises to fix it and to make them safe and to protect them. They don't talk about the rights and freedoms.
It comes from a point of insecurity, really. And it's the strong man who is reinforcing the point of insecurity. And that's kind of,
What were you going to say, Barbara?
Gosh, now I lost my train of thought. So,
sorry.
No, it's no problem. So they sell this fear and insecurity, and they convince people that they're the person that can protect them and make them safe. What they don't talk about are the very, very big negatives. What do autocrats do? They take away people's rights. They take away people's freedoms. They turn citizens against each other, and you only see that later on. You only see the negative effects once it's implemented. So it's kind of like social media. When social media first came on the scene, we all talked about, this is going to be great for democracy. This is going to give, it's going to create people power. But they didn't talk about all the really big negative societal effects that, people who are addicted to their phones and all the negative effects that might have. And, of course, we're only seeing it now 10, 15 years later, and it's much, much harder to reverse once it's implemented, once a strong man is in power, it's much, much harder to get him out than it is to prevent him from coming to power and concentrating power in the first place.
So one of the things I've been wondering about over the last few weeks, because even with this assassination of the CEO from United Healthcare, we've been talking about this for the last week and a half, you're seeing people sort of going, oh, wait a minute, I don't think that, our healthcare and our insurance companies are really doing a good job here, and even, pushing back on the sort of bullhorns for Trump, like Ben Shapiro. And I'm sort of surprised by that. And some people are going, well, wait a minute, maybe tariffs aren't a good thing. Wait a minute, veterans aren't going to get benefits. I don't know how much of that is going to be a drumbeat of that over the next 4 years if we're able to sort of highlight the things that will hurt people. And what occurred to me was I almost feel like it's going to be bad, but I almost wonder how bad it would have been had Trump lost and all those people who really thought something had been taken from them would have been galvanized in violence against the rest of us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a short-term, long-term trade-off, and the bottom line is America is not in a good place right now. We are deeply divided. Our democracy is in decline. There is a rise of a plutocracy and of big money in politics, and increasingly citizens feel and are going to feel that their individual vote is far less important than billionaire power. And you kind of saw that with the murder of healthcare CEO, and kind of the way many in the public reacted, kind of with glee. So had Harris won, we know from the data and by looking at other democracies that are in a similar situation to the United States, weak democracy, identity-based parties, that post-election violence is relatively common. It's especially common in winner-take-all majoritarian democracies, which the United States has. It's particularly common when one party is in decline demographically, which, if you look at the base of the Republican Party, which is white Americans, demographically they're the slowest growing group in the United States. And it's particularly common if that party believes that the election was stolen and it was the second consecutive election they had lost. Yep. So back in July when I was looking at what's going to happen in November, my prediction was that if Harris won, in the short term, we would likely see some of the more extreme elements of the MAGA base protesting, potentially rioting, and maybe some of the militias turning to violence. Yep. That's the short term. Yeah.
And what do you think in the long term with now Trump in office? Here, I guess the better question is, what are some of the things that you feel or believe, and from your expertise, we need to be doing to be vigilant, because they ain't going to do it for us.
Yeah. Well, I like to go back to the model because the model's pretty damn good. And so what I look at, okay, what's going to happen with America's democracy? Strong, healthy democracies experience very, very little political violence and political instability. Think about Denmark and Switzerland and Canada. That's where you want to be. Mm-hmm. The United States' democracy is in a tenuous position. It is no stronger today than it was on January 6, 2021, and it's no stronger today because not a single democratic reform has been instituted since then. So right now, our democracy is kind of at the whim of whoever is in the White House. And if that person believes in democracy and honors democracy, then, democracy continues. But if we have somebody who doesn't believe in democracy and wants to unravel it, our democracy is particularly vulnerable to that. So I would look Trump said he was going to purge the judicial system. He was going to go after DOD and put in high-ranking officers who were loyal to him and not to the Constitution. He said he's going to attack, or he's going to, eliminate many of these checks and balances on presidential power. So that's what I would look at. Is he really going to do that? If he does attempt to do that, will senators and congressmen, especially Republican senators and congressmen who make up a majority of the legislative branch, which is the main check on presidential power, will they try to prevent this? They didn't in his first term. I suspect they won't do it in this term. I'd also look to see what happens with the parties, right? One of the bright spots of this last election was the Republican Party, which had become overwhelmingly white, suddenly was looking a little bit more like the American public. So you had more Latinos and a few more African Americans voting for Donald Trump. Stability needs two healthy political parties that represent all of America, not just one racial and religious group. And that was sort of heartening. But if you listen to what Trump has said are the policies he's going to pursue as soon as he gets in office, he's going to deport illegal immigrants. He's going to get rid of birthright citizenship. These are going to disproportionately affect the Latino community, and he could potentially alienate that constituency for decades to come. So once again, creating a pretty much lily white Republican Party. Mm-hmm. So I would be looking at, will he go after democracy and take us back to a partial democracy to anocracy, and will he be successful doing that? And will he alienate these important minority groups in the United States that we need that the Republican Party ultimately needs in the long term to survive in this democracy? So those are the two things I'd look for.
I am so grateful for your time, and thank you so much for joining us, Barbara. It's Barbara F. Walter. Her book is How Civil Wars Start. It's required reading for anyone invested in preserving our 246-year experiment in self-government. And she's a frequent guest on CNN, MSNBC, and PBS. You can go to barbarafwalter.com for all of her great work. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Have a great evening. We'll talk to you again soon if you'll have us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Excellent. Bye. I need Matt Cummings to meet me in the studio because I have pushed the wrong button for something and I reset the hour. Or Lady B, could I have somebody come help me in the studio because I can't take a break because I pushed the wrong button. I thought I knew what I was doing, Dan Schaefer.
You always do.
I can't go to a break. I can't end the show. Or maybe I can. I mean, but I need the top of the hour. I need the or is that built into the?
Matt's coming right in.
I thought I could reset because I had accidentally killed a segment. Get out of the way. I'm being told to get out of the way. Sorry, Matt. I was being all too clever. Someone showed me how to use one button, and I was like, I can just bring that ad back here, and it wasn't the right button. So let's see what was I supposed to do? Oh, top. Let's see. That's right. I can go to that one.
It's like no, that's they're just like,
that's
don't
for the end of
touch
the show.
anything.
And will that have it has a legal ID, right? No, that's not right. Mm-hmm.
See, this is why I stay on this
reload
side.
Lock. Oh, reload. Okay, there it was.
Yeah.
All right. So we don't have time to do it. So can I just end the show and just do all those things? I did not take that break. So let's take that break. Let's at least do that one and fix it during the break. All right. We'll say goodbye in a minute, I think. Or not. Let's just go to the next show. Bye.
Around the town, Chicago, with Al Betzloff.
My dog eats dog food now. Bravo. She eats good. She does kibble and she does wet. But everything has to be topped with the farm to pet topping. You just sprinkle it on the top of her food. She comes running to it and starts gobbling up her food. I've even tried it. It's really...
And Frank's doing much better now. Okay.
My coat is really good.
His hair is shiny.
Sunday afternoons at 1 on WCPT 820. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
See, Dan Schaefer, you saw some of the magic. I just went one break too far. Oh, you don't want to say goodbye?
Nice. Oh.
Yeah, we're saying goodbye. Yeah, no, we have a minute now.
Oh, okay.
Matt, he came in and fixed the whole show.
Got it.
So we had
All
1
right.
minute to say goodnight. So we've decided that it's okay if I use turd now. I've used it so much in the last hour and a half. I don't know if I ever want to say turd again.
I think we've used it several times.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Dan.
Anytime you ask me to join, I will be here.
I appreciate
love
that.
it.
And what's your plan for the holiday? Anything good?
Quiet.
Quiet.
Yeah.
I like quiet.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we have the turd coming into office, so I don't know how quiet it's going to be. I want to thank Lady B and, of course, Operations Manager Matt Cummings for helping me out. And Randy Rhodes is up next, followed by our friend Matt McNeil. Don't forget to check out Tuesdays with Josie, which is Dan Schaefer's podcast featuring his aunt, who he misses dearly. Grandma. I've heard it both ways.
We're going to do it'll be a
holiday.
The
whole holiday thing.
It'll be good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And coming up tomorrow, Dwayne Kennedy will join me in studio, and we'll have Cheryl Flynn. Cheryl Flynn from the Symphony of Oak Park. We're so excited about that. And Jess Piper, the Dirt Road Dem, as well as just a conversation with you guys. Have a great evening, everybody. And 3, 2, 1, I'm on time. Bye.